Hello everybody, this is Timeless Dubs, and today we're going to be reading some creepypastas for you. Now no, as we read these creepypastas, there will not be any bloopers at the end. But, in fact, if the reader does screw up, you can account those as our bloopers. We hope you enjoy this, and have a happy Halloween.
In the kitchen, a young girl is playing in her bedroom when she hears her mother call to her from the kitchen. So she runs downstairs to meet her mother. As she's running to the hallway, a door from the cupboard under the stairs opens. A hand reaches out and pulls her in. It's her mother. She whispers to her child, "Don't go to the kitchen. I heard it too."
Strangled Red. There are tons of stories out there about hacked Pokemon games. Some of them really quite neat, such as ones about the version where you get a ghost as a starter. Some are ridiculous, silly stories about dying after playing a game. Or the game talking to them. God, don't these writers know less is more when it comes to these stories? Well, I digress. I grew interested in these hacked games that are apparently in any thrift store, on eBay, or handed out by homeless people to random passerby. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting these creepy people. I merely found this particular cartridge in a trash bin in the garbage truck backed into my neighbor's dumpster. I noticed the game asked the trash man if I could take it, and he didn't seem to mind. It was thrown away after all. I, of course, checked with my neighbor to confirm if they actually didn't want it, though they seemed perplexed, as if they'd never seen it in their life. Their son made a grab for it, a little boy who saw the Charizard on the cover, crying out, "Pokemon! I want Mommy!" But his mother told him no, seeing as I found it. He didn't even have a Game Boy anyway. He just liked Pokemon. Thinking nothing more, I simply went home, looking at the cartridge's sticker on the way. Just a plain old red version, with the sticker torn slightly across the Charizard's neck. That was expected, with such an old game. I had a blue version as a kid, so I was a bit eager to see the albeit minimal differences red version had. I was rather disappointed by what I saw when the title screen showed up. Pokemon, Strangled Red version. Well, dang it, it was a hack. Hacks were neat and all, but they had zero monetary value. The original's quite valuable by now, and I wanted to play Red anyway. Not this crap. Oh well, it was free, might as well try it. The name was odd, however. Strangled Red? That made no sense. Not even in a morbid description of someone being asphyxiated, as people turn blue when choking, not red. Who knows? Maybe there was a pair of these hacks, and I just got the red one. The more I thought about this, though, the more interested I became. My initial disappointment turned into curiosity. I wanted to know what the creator had made, and I was going to note everything I saw. The first oddity I noticed was the start screen had a Charizard next to the trainer instead of the Charmander. Also, the Pokemon never cycled through like the original versions did. It just stayed Charizard, even after a few minutes of waiting. Shrugging, I hit start. Noticing there was no Charizard cry as I did, like there was supposed to. I saw there was a continue option, so I figured I'd do what everyone did with the used games and see what the previous owner had done. No. I blinked in surprise. No? What do you mean no? The game wouldn't let me continue no matter what. Though, on the fourth attempt, I heard the Charizard cry. Quiet and barely audible, but there. Shrugging it off, I decided to hit New Game. Like I would have done after checking the old file anyway. The screen cut to black for a while. No Professor Oak, no starting theme, just nothing at all. Eventually, the screen came back, showing a bedroom, 2 beds, 2 TVs, and a computer in the corner. My trainer sprite was the usual one, consistent with the original red version. I was curious as to why I didn't ask my name, though that was answered as I opened the pause menu. noticing my trainer was named Steven. No, this isn't my real name, or some stupid crap like that. This game isn't self-aware or haunted, at least not that I know of. It just had the name chosen already. Curious, I saw he had a starter amount of money, no badges. He didn't look like Red though. His hair was longer, almost reaching halfway down his neck. Red's usual smile replaced with a confident smirk. Honestly, I found this sprite much cooler than Red. Next, I checked out his Pokemon, a single Charmander, level 5, named Miki. Nothing was odd about it, or should I say, her. With the name and all, she had beginning Charmander stats, only knew Scratch and Tail Whip basic stuff. The game seemed relatively normal. Returning to the game, I walked around the room, noticing Steven's long hair was present on the back of my trainer sprite when my back was turned to the camera. I didn't recognize the house, but I descended the stairs to see more. Downstairs was another trainer who spoke to me the instant I came down. Mike. Ready yet? Steven. Yeah. I assumed this Mike was my rival. Pretty excited for me. Or a placement of blue, most likely. Though I thought the back... thought back to the bedroom having 2 beds, realizing that they weren't just rivals, they were brothers. They talked back and forth, basic Pokemon dialogue, become Pokemon Master, catch 'em all, stuff like that. We're having a little argument over which is better, Charmander or Squirtle, which of course led to the introduction battle, like 1 versus Blue in the lab. Simple enough, scratch, tackle, till I won, purely for having the first term. I took note of how much better Steven's sprite looked in combat than Red's. A different pros, his hair looking like it was blowing in the wind. Brief minor upgrade, but still much nicer. I left the house after having some more banter with my brother. Stepping out to Pallet Town theme going east, I found this was indeed Pallet Town. The house was simply on the outskirts to the west. I know there was no mysterious grassy field like in the normal Pallet Town. Wandering about, I decided to check in Red's home. His mother was inside when I talked to her. She commented on how handsome Steven looked, hoping her son would look up to him as a role model for when he became a trainer himself next year. Which of course led me to realize this game took place a year before the original Pokemon. Rose even upstairs playing an SNES in his room, commenting, I'm gonna be the best too when it's my turn. I was starting to like this hack. It was interesting, a completely new adventure. A different character. Hell, Steven even seemed to have a history with the people in this town. A reputation, a personality beyond a silent protagonist. The people in town talked to him as a person, making conversation, not just spouting tutorial crap. Even Blue's sister had new dialogue. They seemed to be in a relationship too, as the dialogue ended with a kiss and a heart over her head. Professor Oak simply wished me well, giving me a Pokedex to aid my adventure. He wasn't giving it to me to be the reason behind the adventure, like every other Pokemon game out there. He gave it to me out of kindness. Something to help me on the way, a gift. I was liking this more and more with each second. The game seemed to have an actual story now. I was somebody. Not just a cookie-cutter protagonist anyone could be. Not some blank sheet that could be replaced without notice. The story is different, though the actual gameplay remained unchanged. I went north like I was supposed to, went from town to town, collected badges, received the praise of the leaders. Steven's fame even seemed to spread, as some NPCs would talk like they knew him. I used Miki for every battle. She was growing surprisingly fast. She handled Brock with ease, even pounded Misty with no trouble at all. She wasn't as adversely affected by super effective attacks as others did, more damage than regular Charmander. She was a veritable powerhouse. She even became a Charizard at the mere level of 25. Not bad at all, I must say. Things started to get weird as soon as I reached Lavender Town. I know. Lavender Town is focused behind every creepy story like. But it was the only place that was noticeably different. There was no Team Rocket invasion, which I found odd, though I did remember that this was a year in the past. So the invasion couldn't occur till Red's time. I tried to enter the Pokemon Tower aiming to get a Ghastly. That's when it got odd. Steven, I have no reason to be here. Steven wouldn't go into the Pokemon Tower, no matter what I did. This was weird. I mean, hell. There are a million places in Kanto you really have no need to be. Little random house with nothing except children NPCs, for example. Why was it here that Steven wouldn't enter? With a shrug, I figured I wouldn't need a ghastly. It seems Miki could handle anything, so I simply went on my way. Lavender Town is serving no purpose other than the passageway with the Pokemon Center. The game progressed normally from there. The remaining gyms fell, and eventually I made it my way to the Elite Four and defeated them. As with my brother, Mike was there before me, initiating the championship battle, which Miki swept with ease. The aftermath of the battle was quite pleasant. None of the tension that was present between Red and Blue at the end of their match. The brothers congratulated each other on their progress and shook hands before the screen went white. No Hall of Fame, nor any credits. When the screen came back, it was the house again. The two brothers sitting at the computer, conversing with each other. Steven, I don't want to. Mike, come on! I just gotta borrow her for a second to finish the Pokedex. The entry won't register unless she recognizes me as Master, just for a second. Steven. But she's my Miki. Mike. I promise I'll give her back. Come on, please? Yes? Or no? I was a bit perplexed, so I hit no to be cautious. Mike, come on, please? No. Come on, please? I realized it would simply continue to loop until I hit yes, so I did, just to see what would happen. Alright, this will just take a sec. Then we'll both be Pokemon Masters, Steven. Duh. The screen changed to the animation shown when two people trade Pokemon, which I found a bit weird, seeing as I was solo. But whatever, this is what was apparently supposed to happen. Miki went first. I watched lazily as she began to travel down the trading tube. Snap! That made me jump. The sudden noise resonated in my silent bedroom due to the loud volume being way up. Looking at the screen, I noticed the game seemed to freeze. Miki's still in mid-trade, but the game wasn't doing anything. With a sigh, I turned off the game, wondering when my last save was. When the game turned back on, I stared up for a moment at the start screen. There was no Charizard next to the trainer. Upon pressing start, I saw the new game option was absent, leaving only continue. This was strange, to say the least. So I selected it, the game starting without even showing my stats as usual. My jaw dropped at what I was greeted with. 1 year later, the Lavender Town theme came first, playing its normal way, the screen slowly fading into blackness. Steven was in the Pokemon Tower, which made the music even stranger, seeing as the tower had its own theme. He was standing in front of a tombstone, not doing anything. When it was gone, I pressed A. Confused, I tried walking, realizing I was indeed in control at the moment. I brought up the pause menu and checked my party. Miki was gone. Not just Miki, all Pokemon. He had nothing. Pokedex was absent from his menu. His bag was empty. Honestly concerned now, I checked his trainer card. He had no money. He had no badges. His playtime was 8,795 hours. Which was impossible, as I had only logged for 30 minutes before. But that wasn't the strangest part. His picture of the handsome, confident, young trainer was different. His eyes were blank. His face turned slightly down. That smirk of his was gone, replaced by a lack of any expression is all. That long hair of his before in a perfect perm was all messy and unkept. I couldn't look at him anymore. Closing the menu, I went to move out of the tower, but that every step took away from the tombstone. The screen flickered, like it did when a Pokemon was poisoned. Gulping, I brought up the trainer card again. The picture was getting worse. Every step I took, he hung his head more and more. His shoulders slumped. He bent over. By the time I had exited the tower, he was on his knees. Hands to his face, hair draped across him. I had guessed already what was going on, but this clinched it. I began to put some things together in my mind. I had always wondered why there was no champion in the original games besides your rival. Why is it you, the protagonist, had to beat your rival, when he just waltzed in, no previous champion to challenge? Then it struck me. The answer was right here. The previous champion gave up. His precious Miki apparently dead, and with her, so died a part of him. His Pokedex, the other Pokemon, his badges, his fame, all of it. He threw it away. And that year that I missed, the year where all those hours came from, I didn't even did the math. 8,765 hours in a year. Add that to my 30 from before, it matched up. Even so, the game kept going. This shouldn't have been an ending, I thought. I mean, what else was there to do? I had no Pokedex, no Pokemon, not anything. What was I supposed to be doing? I walked to everyone in town, they said the same things. Are you okay? Still mourning, I see. Everything will be alright. Please, is there anything we can do? Steven never replied to them. And they all simply said the same things over and over. I couldn't have put the game down. This is all so strange. Curious, I headed off into the tall grass. Eventually got into a battle with Rattata. No Pokemon stood out, just Steven's spray. I was wondering how I'd battle. Wild Rattata left you be. The battle ended without anything happening. This was certainly interesting. It happened with every Pokemon I encountered. Wild Pidgey ignored you. Wild Ponyta wandered off. The music never changed either. No matter how far I went, the Lavender Town came from the speakers following me. Sometimes slowed down slightly, sometimes not. I searched everywhere, every town, talked to everybody, wondering just what the hell I needed to do. My frustration was mixing with the depressing atmosphere of all of this, making the experience altogether unnerving and uncomfortable. I couldn't tear myself away. I was starting to get a bit angry though. Nobody telling me anything besides giving me their condolences and trying to give me items like lemonade or coffee, each met with, Steven, no. I slapped myself for idiocy, suddenly realizing how the likely answer was right in front of me. Palatine, of course. When I went there, though, which took a long time, having no Pokemon to fly with, no bicycle to ride, and Steven only seemed to move half the regular movement speed. It wasn't much different. I first tried talking to Professor Oak. These things happen. You were just unlucky. Next I tried Blue's sister. Please don't leave home again. Red's mom wouldn't even talk to me at all. With nowhere else in mind to go, I walked to the west, finding the house from the beginning, which I had never entered since leaving Palatine. Inside was Mike, but talking was just as useless. Mike, I'm so sorry. I pondered for a moment. Is this really the ending? Steven doomed to do nothing but roam Kanto in misery? Haunted by the memories, forced to listen to everyone's concerns about him. As a last-ditch effort to do anything, I went to the bedroom and walked over to the bed. Steven, I'm going to sleep. The screen faded to black for a moment, then slowly faded back in, having a black tint to it. Steven was right laying in the bed. I assumed this meant it was night. Steven, I'm going to do it.
The Devil's Mimic. You know what our problem is? We're too damn accommodating. That's what I told my wife when she agreed to look after that awful bird. We already look after our friend's toddler every Thursday and take the lady across the corridor shopping. And then there are all the charity case kids she teaches piano for free. It's just too much. So when her Aunt Margaret asked us to look after her pet Mina bird, she just went to Belgium. I wanted to refuse. Of course, my wife didn't. You must know the problem with Mina birds. They mimic sounds they enjoy hearing over and over again. I read on the internet about a Japanese woman who looked after her friend's Mina. After 3 days of the bird making the sound of a microwave, she could take no more. Shut up or I'll make you yakitori. Of course, that became the bird's favorite phrase, and the woman spent the next month trying to re-educate it. So we spent the next 2 weeks on our best behavior. No swearing, no shouting, no... Well, anyway, we were on our best behavior. My wife's aunt loves classical music, so we left the radio on Classic FM. Unfortunately, the bird grew fond of Alan Titchmarsh, so we had to switch to BBC Radio 3. Apart from the fact the bird could imitate the phone, bloody thing. I was waiting for a job interview. Everything went smoothly until 2 weeks into its stay. The first setback was a call from Belgium. The aunt had had an accident and needed surgery. She apologized profusely, asking us to look after the minor until she found a friend to look after it on a long-term basis. Annoying as it was, there was only a minor inconvenience compared to what happened next. I confess that something about the bird's continuous chattering put me on edge, and I found myself unable to sleep. One night, staring blearily at the ceiling, I heard a snatch of music come from the next room. I looked at the alarm clock. 4 in the morning. I wondered, had someone left the radio on? Or was it the mina? I wanted to ignore it, but I was on edge. I went into the next room and checked the radio. Off. I turned to the mina. I was about to say something, but then... Try as I might, I can't fully describe what happened next. Somehow, what the bird said to me is still etched in my soul. I hear every syllable clearly, yet I cannot manage to get it down on paper. I will try to describe it for you. A deep, guttural voice, weary but full of malice, as if the voice were coming out of the ground, from a distant, moss-eaten sepulchre. What the voice said I couldn't understand, but it filled me with inescapable, crushing dread. It was both completely alien to me, and yet at the same time instantly recognizable, as if I had known that voice since birth. In a moment, I was back in bed, the covers pulled over my head, and quaking as if my spine had turned to jelly. My wife, mercifully, is a heavy sleeper. Twice more that night, I heard the snatch of music, and then the voice. Each time the voice sounded nearer and nearer. I could not stop shivering at all. In the morning, I asked my wife if she had been disturbed in the night. Thankfully, she had not. I felt like asking to get rid of the mina, but I knew that would make things worse. To be fair, I had been complaining about it for 2 weeks, and my bizarre story would sound contrived and only make things worse. When she went out to the piano lessons, I took a moment to think. Perhaps my dread last night had been born of the darkness, the sleeplessness, the aggravation the bird caused me. I needed to know whether my fear was justified. I needed to know what the bird was saying. I got an MP3 recorder ready, and waited for the bird to speak again. It had plenty to say, mostly Groucho Marx for some reason, but never repeated the spectral voice. It was only at 4 o'clock the next morning that I heard the snatch of music and knew what was coming next. I grabbed the recorder, set it running, and rushed to the next room. I heard the voice of a woman. Go! Out goes he. I recognized that. It was from an old black and white movie we had watched that evening. Slightly apprehensive, I adjusted the volume slightly and held the recorder to the bird. It cocked its head to one side, looked at me questioningly, and began its dark recital. I shuddered as I heard the deep voice, relayed by such an unconscious form, and yet carrying behind it all the malice of hell. But deep down, I felt I was winning. I had a recording. The bird went through its act 3 times in about 2 hours. The music, the woman's voice, then that deep, haunting muttering, and I recorded it each time. The next morning, I listened to the recording as soon as my wife left for work. In the daylight, I was able to recognize the music as part of Walton's facade, but I was still sickened as I listened back to that voice. Stupid as it sounds, I was also happy that the recording had turned out so well. As I left, I said, "Cheerio," to the myna. "Tell him Groucho sent you," replied the bird. "I don't get what it sees in Groucho marks." I spent the day taking my recording around to find out more about it. I took it to the library, the local language college, the Cultural Institute, and even the sushi bar in case it was Oriental. In all cases, no one knew or had even heard the language before. Also, in all cases, they looked deathly pale when they heard the recording and asked me to turn it off and leave immediately. In fact, the sushi bar offered to make me free maki if I promised never to come back, so that was a plus. But I still had no progress to show, and as a last result I decided to try the Catholic cathedral. The cool stone floors and mosaic walls gave me a welcome respite from the sun as I entered. The cathedral was dark as night inside, with light emanating from the canopy above the altar, like a tent on a hilltop. I looked around and gave a jump as I saw the priest sitting at the information desk. He was tall, quite old, almost skeletally thin. Under his thick glasses, he arranged his mouth into a thin smile and gave a clumsy wave. I approached, with some trepidation, and I told him why I'd come. He listened to the recording in silence, his face displaying signs of recognition. Then he said, "Where did you get this?" I explained about the myna we were looking after. He considered this for a second, excused himself, and sauntered off. He returned with another priest, younger and rounder, with a walrus mustache. He listened to the voice for a second before asking to see the myna immediately. I took both priests to the flat and made them a cup of tea. Then the three of us sat in silence watching the bird. Once again the bird never repeated this sepulchral voice. It seemed only to do it at night. The younger priest made no movement nor sound as he listened, whereas the older, skeletal priest waggled his hands appreciatively each time the myna mimicked Groucho, sometimes wheezing in appreciation. After half an hour, the younger priest spoke. "Mr. Stevens, thank you for alerting us to this extremely serious matter. You did the right thing. I'm happy to say that you aren't in immediate danger. The bird is merely copying some person has heard saying this." "He also does an excellent Groucho," interjected the older priest. "However," continued the younger priest sternly, "whoever said these words is in grave danger. I would ask you to find out where the bird learnt these words and allow us to meet this person." "But how would I find out? It could be from the radio or the TV, or I very much doubt that. You must try to remember everyone who has spoken to the bird." I looked into my tea and shuddered. The young priest sensed my reluctance and said, "Mr. Stevens, you should be happy. You have the chance to save a soul. Such opportunities are not common." After they left, I started racking my brains, writing lists of everyone who had visited the flat. To be honest, I suspected my wife. She had been increasingly distant recently. I knew the fact that I had been out of a job so long was taking its toll on our relationship. I did not know how her voice could get like that, but I knew I didn't understand exactly what I was dealing with. A more promising solution, however, presented itself the next day. Around lunchtime, the phone rang. I answered, but I felt my stomach turn and my heart race when I heard the voice on the other end. It was a steep, stony baritone, somewhat more cheerful than the myna's nocturnal chant, but with unmistakable malice. I tried to answer, but only choked when the words formed. "Mr. Stevens, are you there?" Yes, it's me," I replied, regaining my composure. "You're looking for Margaret's myna, is that right?" "Yes, that's right." "Oh, good. Margaret just phoned from Austin. She wants me to look after it. Can I pick it up tomorrow from your flat? 4 p.m. Yes, of course. See you tomorrow at 4. Of course. How did I miss that? It wasn't someone who came to this flat. The mine had learned it from a friend of Aunt Margaret. I felt relieved, but only for a second. Was Aunt Margaret involved in this? I didn't know, but I did know this. A friend of hers was some way involved. Now I had to face this man, this unknown terror. I didn't know what to expect. I was worried. If I exposed this man, how would he react? Would it be safe? The next day came. A monstrous summer storm had gathered, and the London sky was dyed dark green by the sapphire sun. Rain thrashed the windows and cried miserably as it slid into the gutters. It was a Thursday, so we were babysitting again. This was bad timing, as I didn't want the baby there when I confronted the stranger. I looked anxiously at my watch. 10 to 4. I shivered. One part of me wanted to just hand over the bird. Don't mention anything about the odd incantation. After all, why should I bother why should I believe the priests told me? I knew what I was going to do, but then I heard the music. That little snatch of music, so simple, but the precursor of that demonic voice. The baby gurgled happily on the sofa. And when someone so young to hear the voice, I rushed to the bird, and I started speaking in the woman's voice. I felt my heart leap in my throat. My first thought was to throttle the mina, but I was interrupted by a voice. That terrible, dark voice. Every fiber of my body wanted to scream. The voice had come from the baby.